So, this is what we do on Valentine's Day. Hi, Valentine. We are preparing for a show.
And when you're preparing for a show, every minute counts. And this is how we're spending Friday night.
So we thought we would invite everyone into our studio for our Valentine's Day. I heart you. So I have paint on my hands because I've been painting frames and getting those prepared. My dad made the frames, and to help Dale save time so he can keep painting, I'm working on just getting those frames painted and moving in that direction. And Dale's working on a painting right now, and this looks like the Kelly. Is this the Kelly?
It is the Kelly. It's down by those bridges. I guess this is I-95 overhead. And I've painted these bridges numerous times. And each time I find something new and different about it. In this particular case, I'm really interested in this fluid, sort of purplish blue, dark, shadowy environment. It just is a very evocative kind of space and color. And it's a color range that I've not worked in, and I thought it would be interesting to try. And so that's what this one's about.
I see you have strings in there this time. Are you leaving the strings in, or are you gonna remove them? I mean, what are they there for anyway?
Well, a few years ago, I started to play around with the idea of collaging elements into the encaustic. I knew that it could work with that. I'd actually done it probably 30 years ago in a slightly different incarnation. So I started to do it because I wanted to get a particular texture in a still life painting for a rear wall. And when I did it, I put the string down and I sort of poured the paint into it. And then I pulled the strings up and ended up forcing some color in between that crevice and scraping it and changing it and heating it. And well, anyway, it just led to lots of other applications for the string. And in this case, these strings lay the groundwork for an electrical tower that resides between these two bridges.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just an interesting way to start to get that structure in place.
Mm-hmm.
Also, it's such a stark contrast from the fluid paint that's just moving around, and then these linear elements.
Yeah, it looks really different than when I think about your finished work. This is very suggestive. It's, I mean, there's really not much structure at all. I mean, it's, I mean, there is structure obviously there, but it's, yeah, very, very fluid, very liquid.
But I've always wondered, when you're heating up the whole painting itself, why does it like kind of change textures? Because I see that, you know, before it looked very detailed. In fact, when I see your other paintings, it looks very detailed. But why does it's like kind of like a blob over the whole thing?
Well, what happens the first time you apply the paint, it sits there in the spot that you applied it, so you're going to have a lot of control. That first layer, before you do any heating of it, generally is fairly detailed looking. It's the edges of it are much more definite, and when you heat it, it runs together. And of course that depends on how much you heat it. And in this case, I deliberately heated it to the point where it almost became a watercolor.
Yeah, that's what it really does look like. That's why it looks kind of different than, it really looks like it was burned in ahead of time.
Yeah.
Like a fast, quick shot of a burn.
And all the paintings that I do have a stage where they get burned in to this level, maybe not necessarily to the point where they run together, but the paint does have to reach a place where it bonds with what's underneath it. In this case, I deliberately made it run together because I want the shadows to have a very fluid quality, and then the structures of the bridge to be sharp contrast to that. To me, that's the other part of what this painting's about. So it's a twofold exercise in contrast.
Dale, I noticed you're working from a color study, and which you normally do. How do you work those up? I mean, you have I know you go on site and you do your color studies, sometimes on site. Is that what happened with this one?
Yeah, and in this case, the color study is actually it's gouache,
It's beautiful.
and well, it's got layers of varnish over it, so that
Okay.
it feels a little bit more like encaustic. It's got that sort of light coming from underneath. And when I do these color studies, they're very free, and it's just on a piece of illustration board. But it helps to anchor the color idea, so that when I'm coming to this final painting, I've got some of that mapped out.
Yeah, maybe you can step away, Dale, so I can kind of see that. I like, that's from what you're working from.
That's very nice.
Now, these strings, if you notice, they're almost a separate composition. You get the composition of the verticals and the parabolas in the painting, and then the horizontals of the water. And then you have this sort of subcontext to kind of another melody of strings that are coming across here. And in fact, they remind me, and I was thinking of it when I was doing it, of the strings of cello, the way they kind of come along and they sort of head toward the neck of the cello as you move up. But it's got a musical sort of feel, almost abstractly imposed on what I'm hoping is going to be a musical treatment of the color. I wanted to have a color chord that is carries a kind of melody to it that's singular to this painting and this time.
Well, I think we can stop with that, I guess, because we've also invited people into our house and or our studio. And happy Valentine's Day to everyone. Give me a kiss.
And it's time to eat. Been a long day.